All right, everybody, welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyshynski of the Connection Newspapers, BJ Kubrules of the Connection Newspapers, Mirza Krispavicic of the Connection Newspapers, and Paul Frummel of the Connection Newspapers. There's a certain excitement in the building tonight, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because it's the Northern Region Football Preview Edition of the Fairfax Sports Report. We've been waiting months and months to get to this point, ladies and gentlemen, and we're not going to let it pass us by because we've got all the previews you'd ever want of the Northern Region. Plus, we've got Herndon football coach Tommy Myers scheduled to come on and discuss the much-heralded Hornets this year as well. So plenty to do tonight, and please stick around. It's going to be a great show. Before we get cracking, we want to thank the folks that make this show possible every single week. Talking, of course, about the underwriters. People like CCI Screen Printing from all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And, of course, Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And, hey, Glow Pucks and 10 cents a year, the 101 worst ideas in sports history by yours truly. Available wherever books are sold. As always.
Been reading up. I'm
sure you have.
Absolutely.
Boys, let's not waste any time. All right, let's waste some time. Understand that there was a little hiring to talk about before we get into the football madness. We have to talk a little bit about basketball.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, we should mention when there's a hiring in the area and a Northern Region coach is hired. A girls basketball coach was hired at Herndon High School. Reggie Barnes will be taking over that position for Coach Dwight Trimmer, who was more famously known in the region for taking Robinson to 2 state title games and having some success at Herndon. Though limited over the last couple of years, we'll see if Coach Reggie Barnes can get that program on the right track and see if those girls can win some games.
There you go. Hey, and great show last week, by the way. I want to point out, thanks for all the feedback from everybody on the top 100 athletes show we did last week here on the Fairfax Sports Report. I think it was very successful looking back at it, and I think everybody at home really got a kick out of seeing some of those old names ranked with some of the new names last week.
Absolutely. Got some good feedback from the viewers at home, and that's always welcome. Of course, if you go on our website, fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, there's a little tab there where you can email us and let us know what you think about what we're saying, about the teams that you like this year. Just interact with us a little bit, give you a chance to really get your voice heard here on the Fairfax Sports
Absolutely,
Network.
And I'm sure after tonight, everybody will be utilizing that feature with some frequency. All right, boys. All right, let's start off with a little impossible trivia question. We usually do this later in the show. I think we're going to do it earlier in the show tonight because we've got so much of this football stuff to get to. So let's get cracking with it. Let's say get cracking twice now tonight. I think this is a new beverage game we're starting. Okay. What Concord District team has made the playoffs for the last 7 years in a row? Concord District team has made the playoffs for the last 7 years in a row. Anyone venture a guess?
It's Fairfax. It's got to be Fairfax.
You know, there's a bit of a gap.
Says the Fairfax boy.
Says the Fairfax boy. Well, I'll tell you who it is. And it's a bit of a trick question.
Okay.
It's a bit of a trick question because, as you know, there was redistricting, and this team made the playoffs a whole lot in the Patriot District. And this team would, of course, be Robinson. Robinson is the team that has made the playoffs for the last 7 years in a row. Check it out. They have won 75 games in the last 7 years, have made the playoffs in all 7 of those years, winning a state title in 2001 and appearing in the Northern Region title game 5 of those 7 years.
Really no surprise there.
And, you know, when we were talking about it with Mirza in the office, kind of, you know, where Robinson belongs on our top 10 list, you know, and to begin the season, it's always a crapshoot with the top 10, and we'll get to that and get a chance to show the viewers at home what we think the top 10 is in the region. But talking to Mirza, he did a little bit of research and talked to the coaches over there. 7 years, Mirza, what does that say about their program?
I mean, like a lot of the coaches in the region have told me this. You know, Robinson, they lost a lot of people this year, but they're not counting Robinson out because of that. Robinson is a program; they're not a year-to-year team. And you know, as a program, I mean, the results show. You know, they speak for themselves. 7 years in a row in the playoffs. 5 out of those 7 years in the regional title game. 2 times in the state championship game.
It really does show something when they jump into the Concord, arguably the hardest district in the state. They jump in and they make the playoffs. So that really shows something about Robinson's program, their legacy.
And also, I mean, it speaks to the quintessential thing, I think, in the Northern Region when it comes to success year to year, which is coaching. I mean, Robinson has pretty much the same coaching staff, it would appear, that they've had for the last 5 years. I mean, there's a consistency there. There's a consistency in the program. You know, you talk to anyone in that Robinson program, they're always going to tell you, the minute you leave elementary school, you're basically a Robinson kid. You know what I mean? And that means that you are in that pipeline, and they know who's coming down the pike. You know, they call this year a rebuilding year. Nah, Robinson doesn't rebuild. Robinson reloads. They hit some bumps, but it's never bumps that other programs have to go through because they have so many kids lined up behind the kids that graduate that they are ready to rock and roll every year, it seems. I've been in this position before looking at a Robinson team that lost significant talent. When they graduated quarterback Garrett Shires, when they graduated Mike Emo, and it just seems like every single time you want to say, you look at the skill positions and say, oh boy, where are they going to find X player to do X on the offensive side of the ball? It forgets the fact that they have so many kids ready to roll on the offensive line and a defense that continually seems to have players at every single position and a player in back of them as well. So
it really speaks to their freshman and JV teams. They're churning out talent there. They take these kids and they make them good. And when they're ready to play they're ready to play at the varsity level when they get their chance. And that says something about their JV and freshman teams.
I think having a secondary school is something that some high schools don't get to experience because you have kids already near the kids they want to be like. There's a bit of a separation between middle schools and high schools and that sort of thing. And I think that, when you're a seventh grader and you see like a Lucas Caparelli on the field and you see what comes with that sort of success, and those are just some of the big name players at Robinson. Anybody wants to be a Robinson football player that's in that school, I think. Right. I think it's just a program that continues to breed player after player. And they also, let's talk about this too, they have the feeder programs that continue to flow into that school that aren't only getting those kids ready by the time they're in 6th and 7th grade, but before they even get to the school.
Oh, absolutely.
Another thing, to go along with that is this feeling of tradition at Robinson. Every player from Robinson that I've talked to over the last couple of weeks has this feeling that they have this responsibility to uphold the Robinson tradition, to win, game in, game out. And, they've obviously shown, like I said, the results speak for themselves. Over the last 7 to 8 years, it's been just winning, winning, winning.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a look at the Concord District from last year, the standings from last year, which saw Robinson obviously making an impact in their first season there. You see 9-2 overall with that out-of-region game. Westfield 5-1, Robinson 5-1, Oakton 4-2, and Centerville 4-2. Boys, any reason to believe that this is going to change dramatically?
Well, I think Robinson hurt themselves last year by playing the out-of-district game against Good Counsel. Yes, they won it. They put the whole thing to rest about, public school versus private school and who's the true giant. I think they put that argument to rest, but what they did was they hurt themselves in the PowerPoint ratings and that sort of deal. So, where they could have probably secured home field advantage, everybody was very upset when Oakton, just a 4-2 team, got home field advantage for the Northern Region playoffs. But why? Why did they get that home field advantage? They got that because they played Stonebridge in an out-of-conference game, and Stonebridge went on to win so many games that they got those PowerPoints fed to them. So down there at 4-2, they jumped over everybody, leapfrogged over the top two in the district, got home field advantage, caused a bit of a stir. But I think as you look at those top four, I think that's probably the top four. But you can't forget about a Herndon down there at 2-4, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about each one of those teams. But looking at last year, guys, I don't see a lot changing except for that Herndon team maybe making a dramatic jump and Centerville getting into the playoffs like they should have last year.
Yeah, and you look at Herndon at 2-4 last year in the Concord. I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of a possibility that they're going to flip-flop with Oakton in that setup, and maybe Westfield, takes a step back a little bit this year. But I don't think there's any question that the popular sentiment you see in talking to and looking at the opinions of some of the folks that follow football around here is that there is going to be maybe a little bit of movement in that 3-4 team area in the district this year, where maybe Oakton, despite obviously an amazing season last year, takes a little step back, and Herndon, with all of those seniors coming back, might take a step up.
We talked about a lot of these Concord teams with a lot of these coaches as we've all been going to camps this week and talking to these coaches and finding out what they think about everybody else. Everybody wants to talk about Oakton taking a step back, and you said it yourself, Greg, and while I believe they will take a step back, I mean, what more can you do after winning a state title, okay? I believe they will take a step back from that, but not as big as everybody thinks. We'll get in a chance to really break down Oakton in a minute here, but when you think about what they've been able to do, they've established themselves as a bit of a program as well, as has Robinson and these top Concord dogs. You think about Westfield, Robinson, Oakton, those top three, and of course Centerville with Coach Skinner over there, they've really built programs that continue to replenish themselves.
You covered that Oakton team pretty regularly last year during that amazing run to the state championship. I mean, they Was that a team that really threw a lot of those younger players into the mix?
No.
That was a senior-laden team.
That was a senior-laden team.
So the question becomes, is it just having been there, having been for that ride, that's going to give these kids a little bit more experience and a little bit of an edge over other teams, or did they need to play?
Well, I'm not going to kid anybody by saying that I think Oakton will be back in the state championship game. I think they'll be kidding themselves if they think that. Now, they have a totally different system. They still have some of the same players, some of the key impact players, but just they lost too much. They lost 31 seniors. They still have the coaching staff. But as much as you want to say a team can replenish itself, look, they had 170 kids come out for the team this year. But how can you replace a guy like Keith Payne? Over 2,000 yards rushing last year, 27 touchdowns, the Virginia AAA Player of the Year, and now could possibly be seeing time on the field for UVA as a true freshman. So that's hard to replace, including some other key components like their fullback Taylor Nalepa. They're really looking to fill some holes, but they've got some kids, like you said, Greg, that have been there. They've been there. They went on that long run. They know what it takes. I think they'll be better off than people think that they will be.
All right. Well, I understand we have a super special guest right now on the phone joining us. It's Tommy Meyer, head coach of the Herndon Hornets. Tommy, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right, Coach. It's Greg, BJ, Mirza, and Paul. How are you tonight? Doing well?
Yeah, doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. All right, then. Well, how are your Hornets looking this year? Have you ever had this many seniors returning from one year to the next?
No. It's typically, the number we have is typically about 30, 32, maybe 33 is the most I've ever had. So it's 43 seniors is by far the most I've ever had.
And, Coach, when you look at some of those seniors, this is BJ here. I came out to camp this week and got a chance to talk to you and some of the guys that are going to carry your team. In particular, there's one important piece you do have back among several in Zay Lopez, your quarterback from last year that threw for about 970 yards and ran pretty well with the football as well. I think he threw for 13 touchdowns. What's the difference in Zay this year, and what do you see him bringing to the team?
Well, what he brings is just confidence. The confidence I have in Zay is unexplainable. I mean, he's last year as a junior, he played like a senior. But he runs the team well. He runs the football well. He'll run a lot of option with them. And, of course, he wants to pass it on every down.
Talk a little bit about your running back. I mean, obviously, Thompson's the kid that everybody looks at. Are there other options at running back for you as well?
Well, Chris is going to be he's a 1,000-yard rusher. He's back. But Desmond Stifu will be Chris's backup, and he'll get a lot of touches himself. Obviously we rush the ball quite a bit, but they're both very good running backs. What we do, I think what we have this year is what we haven't had in years past is just playmakers at all of our different positions.
Now, Coach, this is Paul here. Now, with these offensive weapons, can you talk a little bit about your defense, what you got there?
Well, what we have is a system. Meaning at Herndon High School, Joe Schaefer's our defensive coordinator, and our kids play our defense at the freshman level, JV level, and varsity level. And don't be fooled by, we might have 3, 4, maybe 5 returning kids on defense, but we have kids that have been just waiting their turn, playing JV football. I am optimistic that we're going to be good defensively again. It's just a lot of these kids have had to wait their turn. And I think we have some good-sized kids. I think we have some headliners, some all-district pick caliber kids. But most importantly, we have kids that have been playing football at Herndon for 4 years and know what they're doing.
And Coach, when I came out and got a chance to speak with you and some of the guys, I was talking with Mike Lindholm, all first-team Concord District defensive lineman who's going to be playing both sides of the line, really getting the vibe from you that not only is Lindholm going to be important to the team this year, but really your line is going to dictate, your offensive and defensive line is going to dictate just how far this Herndon team full of all these offensive weapons can really go.
Oh, there's no doubt. In the Concord District, you have to be good on the offense and defensive line. I mean, while I was waiting to speak to you guys, I heard you talking about Oakton. And what Oakton has done well in the past couple of years, just to use them as an example, they're good on the offensive line, defensive line. Those kids are very unheralded. You don't hear much about them, but they make and break you in the Concord District. If you're not good up there, you will get embarrassed on Friday night.
Didn't realize you could hear the show. I'm glad we didn't say anything stupid about Herndon while you were waiting to come on, huh?
No.
Hey, Tommy, the thing I wanted to ask you, this is obviously the second year of a 2-year schedule cycle for the Northern Region. You guys don't exactly have the luck of a draw when it comes to the schedule. I mean, you've got Robinson, Westfield back-to-back, and then later in the season, at another point in the season, you've got Oakton and Centerville back-to-back. In a perfect world, do you want to break those games up a little bit?
Well, yeah, in a perfect world, but you got to play them sometime. Like Oakton, to use Oakton last year as an example, I don't know when they play them, but if you're going to get to a state championship, you've got to go through the Concord District, and I think a lot is said about when you play and scheduling. You've got to take them one at a time. Your kids have to focus on not who you played last week and not who you're playing next week. You really have to take it one game at a time and try to knock off as many of these Concord District opponents as you can.
Coach, you guys got really close last year. You had Oakton at your place, really tight up into the half. You took Robinson to the brink. You guys were really on the brink last year with a junior-laden team. Now they're all seniors. What's the vibe you're getting from the guys in camp? What are they relaying to you as the leader of the team? Where do they think they can go?
Well, I'll tell you, one, we were a good football team last year. I mean, we were 6-4, and as you said, in all those games, but I don't want that to go without saying that we had a good football team in the Concord, and we were 6-4, so that was kind of humbling, But this year, our kids know that you've got to survive the Concord District. You've got to somehow come out of that district, as Oakton did, and then the sky's the limit. And our kids, I think, really picked up on the Oakton success last year. They said, hey, if Oakton can do it, why not us? And I really sensed that mentality this year that, just lay our cards out on the table. Let's give it everything we've got and, see what happens at the end of the year.
Hey, Coach, talking to a lot of the coaches around the region, they're all talking about you guys. I mean, you guys are out there. Do your players realize that they're being talked about? And if so, how are they handling the pressure?
Well, I think our kids want to be as I said, that's the mentality of these kids. They're kind of, we were kind of sure, like I said, the people on our team realized we had a good team last, and we ended up 6-4. So I think, in the weight room, we stepped it up this year. The turnout's been great, and the kids really don't, they're not really, they don't care if they're the hunters or the hunted. They just want to get the season going and take it one at a time. We know that Westfield and Robinson and Oakton and Centerville, we're aware that they're always going to get, the headlines and the top 20 rankings. We just want to kind of work ourselves into a situation where, week 7, week 8, week 9, they're talking about Herndon High School.
Hey, Coach, having covered you for many a year now, let me ask you, is there a certain sense of I don't want to say desperation, but of opportunity that you see in this team? I mean, you are fully loaded. The cupboard is stocked. Is this the year where you feel you need to win?
Well, no, I feel like I need to win every year. I mean, I approach it every year that way, regardless of what our record ends up being. We always feel like we're in every game and we're out to win every game. I wouldn't say, like I said, I think we have a lot of unproven. I think people talk about skilled kids. I don't think people realize that we really have to, find some people on the offensive and defensive line before we start talking about championships. We really have to, these scrimmages are going to be very valuable, and the first couple of weeks of the season, I'll know better whether we can block and tackle people, I know we can run the ball and throw the ball and catch the ball. Now we got to find out if we can do anything up front.
Absolutely, Coach. And just to touch on a couple more players before we let you go here, I wanted to talk a little bit about Matt Seeger. He's probably going to be one of the more go-to receivers for Zay this year, and I know he would probably sitting out for the last 2 weeks of practice with a knee sprain or whatnot. How is he doing, and who are some other guys that we haven't mentioned so far that are going to make an impact for the Herndon Hornets this year?
Well, Matt Seeger is just a great athlete. I mean, he's going to be, I think he's the best defensive back that I know of coming back in this area. I mean, he's a tremendous free safety. He's a great tackler. He's about 15 pounds heavier than he was last year, and he's a great offensive weapon. I think he'll, I'd be surprised if he wasn't one of the leaders in receptions this year. He's just a great kid to have back. He's as good a blocker as he is catcher. C.J. Glenn, returning wide receiver we have has just been fantastic the first 3 weeks. A lot of people don't know about him. He's a great athlete. He's fast. He's been a real, not so much a surprise, but he's really practiced very well. I'm excited that there's a kid that nobody knows about, and I think he's going to be a touchdown maker.
Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. We all do. Now we all know about C.J. Glenn. You just blew this whole surprise talking about him on our show. But, hey, good luck this season, Coach. Thanks for your time. We hope to catch up with you again as we get closer and into the thick of that Concord District schedule.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. Thanks,
Appreciate it,
Coach. All right, Tommy Meyer, ladies and gentlemen.
And, you know, he's absolutely right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, Greg. As much as maybe he doesn't want to talk about it, they do have to win this year. They have all the pieces, and they're loaded. You said the cupboard stock, and that's absolutely it, and they know it too, talking to the kids out at practice. You know, Chris Thompson, a kid that rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, was what Tommy called at practice one of the unsung heroes of the region. He mentioned a couple of backs in Keith Payne from Oakton. You've got Evan Royster at Westfield. You've got another kid over at you got Payne, Caparelli from Robinson,
right.
Royster, and then there was Thompson, and nobody was talking about him. And so, you know, I think Coach Meyer really wanted to see Thompson elevated to the level he deserves to be at. And I think with him and a good quarterback, a good receiving core, they get that line shored up. The sky is the limit for Herndon High School.
Bottom line about Herndon is this, and thank you for agreeing with me because I'm absolutely right. The opportunity is here, and the opportunity is here for a coach and a program that constantly talks about how the chips are stacked against them in that district.
They are.
Of course they are. But for once, they're not. For once, you could look, like our friends at the Washington Post gave a star rating for the talent in a program, the quality of the program. And they rated Herndon as a 3-star program compared to Centerville, Oakton, Robinson, and Westfield, who were all 4-star programs. I don't agree with that. Right. Not this year. Not with what Herndon has coming back. And I'm sorry, you can't look at that team, the way it's constructed, the chemistry they have coming back from last year, having played competitively last year, and honestly say that they are not the prohibitive favorite in that district, and anything less than at least a playoff spot is a complete disappointment.
I think some people would argue against that. I think some Centerville people would say that they're most likely the favorite in that district. I think Herndon is going to be one of the best Herndon teams they've seen in years. I think they should get a playoff spot. I think their schedule's going to work to their advantage. Having those games broken up, I mean, they're coming in 2s, whereas some people got them in 4s last year. So I think having that schedule broken up the way it is and the way that they're having people come to their place, the tougher games, I really believe that Herndon and Centerville will be at the top of that Concord district. I still think a lot of people have Centerville pegged as the number 1.
All right. What you see here is they are stacked, as we've talked about. They have all that offensive talent there.
Who, Centerville or Herndon?
Herndon, I'm talking about. But the thing about also talking about how this is their year is Westfield and Oak, they took a step back.
Right.
Obviously took a step back, but a step back in the Concord is like a fall. So this is their chance now.
Let's talk about those Wildcats from Centerville. Now, BJ says that they should be the prohibitive favorite. There's no question that, just like Robinson, they're a program that seems to have lost talent at the skill positions, but all of a sudden has players right in the reserve, ready to come up and start in their place. And do you believe that they are the top team in the Concord?
I definitely do. It's all about the big three. Quarterback Van Chu, running back Brandon Davis, running back Brandon Williams. Wide receiver Brandon Williams. Those kids are fast. I mean, they are going to run circles around other teams. Now, you know, as Coach Skinner said, if you put 7 in the box, we're going to throw on you. And they got Williams to take it to a touchdown. If you put 5 in the box, we're going to run on you. So they have the weapons there. The only question mark, aside how good Chu is as a quarterback, the question mark I see is they lost some all-state offensive linemen. They lost Colin Miller, they lost Bo Warren. And I talked to Chu, and he said these young kids stepping into those positions, they have shown an exponential amount of improvement already. He feels that they will be ready by week 1, which is, right now. They are ready to take those positions and do well with them. So I see Centerville having the top spot in the Concord.
Again, to buddy up with that, Centerville is the top dog still. You gotta knock them off. I know Oakton won the state title last year, but Centerville sat out with an 8-2 record. Dudzik and Dose last year. Centerville quarterback Drew Dudzik to Cameron Dose was an unstoppable tandem, and now you've got them switching to staying with that no huddle offense, but running the ball more. So I think we'll see Centerville do well with that team speed, but I don't know exactly how well. I still think they have some questions to answer.
Well, Skinner did mention that he wants to snap the ball 70 to 80 times a game. So when you're pounding, if this offensive line is as good as advertised, if they're pounding, 70 to 80 plays a game, it's going to wear out some defenses. It's going to give an opening for Davis or Williams or Chu.
You just talking about Centerville and last year reminded me of all the arguments we had about expanding the playoffs. All right. Well, hey, let's talk about Westfield. The big news there is a major big name sibling is now taking over at quarterback, and Whitmer moves over to wide receiver. Talk a little bit about Mike Lennon and whether he's going to be able to keep those Bulldogs in contention.
Certainly, Mike Glennon is their offensive hope. It's all about Mike Glennon this year for the Bulldogs. As Coach Verbanek said, God-given 6'6". I mean, he can see the field, and we know how Sean Glennon is. We know his brother Sean Glennon. We know the talent that Sean Glennon had. He's starting at Virginia Tech now, so there's some good genes there from Mike Glennon. Big story with Westfield, though, obviously, is the loss of Brandon Royster.
Fairfax kid, ladies and gentlemen.
Obviously the loss of Evan Royster. I mean, that's going to put a huge hole there in running back, and also they're only returning 3 offensive starters this year. So I mean, if that's not a step back, I don't know what is. Verbanek said that they are looking at 3 junior running backs to fill that position. They're all going to get some time. So we just don't know how good these running backs are until they're in a game situation.
And closing out the Concord, you had Chantilly at 4-6 last year. You had Fairfax at 1-9. I will go to my grave saying that Fairfax would have been a 500 team at the very least had they still been in the Liberty District.
Definitely.
Which team do you think is going to be out of the Concord basement this year, Fairfax or Chantilly?
I think Fairfax. Unfortunately, Fairfax stays in the basement because you have Chantilly. You have stability there. Coach Lally, when he took over the starting job last year, he was the 3rd coach in 3 years for Chantilly. They didn't have any consistency. They didn't have any stability. They were 0-10 2 years ago, 4-6. I mean, it's a little bit of an increase. It's definitely a great increase from 0-10, and now he's back for another year. I mean, I think that Chantilly will definitely be better.
0-9-1 would have been an increase from 0-10.
No, it's definitely a significant. How about significant increase?
Fair enough. All right, let's go. Let's take a look at our top 10 for this season and what we think is actually right now the top 10 teams in the Northern Region overall. What do you think? I mean, who is our number 1 right now?
Well, right now we have Centerville ranked as our number 1 team, and I think that they most definitely belong there with what they've been able to do, who they're bringing back. You see, we talked a lot about Herndon, and they're at the number 3 slot right there. I guess what we're saying is they'll be second in the Concord, but still a playoff team because of all those PowerPoints. And then again, Paul, you're covering a Loudoun team out there in Stonebridge.
Good old Stonebridge with Coach Thompson, yes.
Right.
I mean, they should be at number 2. I believe that they are a number 2 team.
And let's hit an impossible trivia question real quick before we go and talk about Stonebridge and the Liberty District. And that trivia question, my friends, is an interesting one because it has to do with Stonebridge. Would you like to hear it?
I think you could rattle that off. I might be able to answer it, though.
What Northern Region team lost to Stonebridge twice last season? Which Northern Region team lost to Stonebridge twice last season? Do you know the answer?
Well, Greg, I do know the answer to that question because I wrote it.
Yes.
So the answer to that question, folks, is Madison. Anybody who watched Liberty District football last year watched Madison and Stonebridge just do battle twice. I mean, the Warhawks dropped a 15-7 decision to the Bulldogs on October 14th in the regular season, and then they lost to Stonebridge, which went on to be the AAA Division V runner-up on November 18th, which ended Madison's season and basically catapulted Stonebridge forward. But that was only a 21-17 victory for Stonebridge, so that shows you how good Madison was last year, a Division V team with a quarterback in Warren Anderson, and a good running back in Justin Duncan, also a state champion track star. So they had a team full of talent. I think that Madison and Stonebridge will again be the class of the Liberty District.
Well, let me ask you about Stonebridge, Paul. They had a very significant addition in the offseason, getting Devin Brown from Bishop O'Connell, who is a real offensive star at that school. He joins an offense that does return more than I thought they did, seeing them last year. I thought they lost everybody, but it turns out Terrence Glenn's back at quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, they certainly bring back enough to be the second best team in the Northern region right now.
Well, the only significant loss they had on offense was Shamar Knight Justice at running back. But you lose Knight Justice, and then Devon Brown falls in your lap, and that's just that's a great thing for Coach Thompson to have. Coach Thompson now has had a chance in practice to see Brown, and he's blown away. He said he's better than anything he heard of or hoped for. So
wow.
That's gonna be great for the Bulldogs. And the one thing about Stonebridge that's a little scary is they lost a lot of their linebackers this year. So last year. So that's one hole that Thompson is looking to fill. But aside from that, they are going to be as good, or if not better, than last year.
Looking at Madison, BJ, Kevin Healy's the quarterback. To think about Madison, they had a thing last year where they shut out a bunch of teams. And I mean, look at the schedule from last year. I mean, do you believe that the shutouts are a very big deal, or do you think it's just based on the teams they were playing?
I mean, you take your Stonebridge and your Madison, and maybe you throw your Langley in there at the top of the Liberty District, and then everybody else has struggled over the last couple of years. And so you take those Division V teams and you kind of put them with the rest of the region and the top dogs maybe out of the Concord, and take some of the other top dogs out of their district, and then you're left with a couple of teams that, frankly, I mean, it's not as difficult to shut them out. So I think they're not being tested week to week against their Liberty opponents, but I do believe that Madison could have made as far as a run as Stonebridge made last year had they gotten a chance to beat Stonebridge. Now, it was a close game. They were about a field goal away from doing it and just couldn't pull it off. So you look at a team like Madison, they lost 24 seniors from last year's team. They only had 63 kids come out and try out this year.
Wow.
So that's a tough break, but you get Healy back. And Healy was a guy that got mop-up duty when Anderson went down with an ankle sprain. I believe it was against Jefferson. So he got some mop-up duty. He threw a couple of interceptions, but also threw for a touchdown against Marshall. So this kid has some experience. He's gone to quarterback camps every year. He was a quarterback on the JV team and freshman team. So he's not just a guy coming into a receiver being converted to a quarterback because he knows routes. I mean, this is a kid that knows quarterbacking. He's a smart kid. Gordon Leib, the coach at Madison, has been there for 8 years, and he told me, he said, I've been here 8 years. I can make comparisons now. And he goes, this is going to be as good of a quarterback as we've had. He's a cerebral kid, a pocket passer, but he's elusive, and he can run a little bit. Don't take that away from Healy. He's not a runner, but he can run.
And truth be told, I mean, you look at the way they run that offense, if it's indeed going to be the same offense we've seen year after year at Madison, and being a pocket passer, being a guy who's gone to the quarterback camps, it's not exactly the most mandatory thing from a Madison quarterback, because you just have to be able to run that sort of crazy option offense that they run.
Right. They run this superpower offense, which is 3 yards in a cloud of dust, handed off to your running back, which they've got two pieces of their running game back as well. Aaron Lambert, and you've also got Renier Bravo. So two guys back that can carry the ball. Look, the thing that Gordon Leib doesn't want is turnovers, whether it's an interception or a fumble. So if they prove to Gordon, and I talked to him about this, they may throw the ball a bit more than they have in the past. They're going to run their superpower. If they can throw off of it, they're going to do it. Once they start turning the ball over, it's back into the running back's hands. And that's just something that will kill you. He's right. You don't want to turn the ball over in football. It's the one thing that you don't want to beat yourself. And he's going to take that option away, whether they're going to run it or throw it. That will be up to how their quarterback Healy handles the pressure of throwing that football.
Now, one of the teams in the Liberty that could be one of those teams that makes a move into that top 2 this year, they're in our top 10, I believe, right now, is Langley. Now, Langley seems to have the same rap for the last few years, which is big, beefy linemen and some talent to run behind them. How do the Saxons look?
Well, in his third year at Langley, Coach Howerton has really instilled that weight room atmosphere. He gets the big kids off the street in the school, throws them in the weight room, and he says, come be a lineman for me. They've done well with it, but 4-6 last year is not that great. Their quarterback, Graham DeBow, went down in the first game of the season last year with a broken arm. Not a lot of people knew he was even the quarterback because he only made one start. So they went to another quarterback who did well, was capable, but I think DeBow gives them their best chance to win. They've got the lineman they've always had. Marshall Moore is a Division I prospect, huge kid. He's going to be really looked at this year. Plus, you got a 1,000-yard tailback in Josh Siegel. He ran for 1,000 yards in 7 games. He played on a Thursday, ran for 200 yards for the JV team. They brought him up to varsity the next night, ran for another 150 yards. So this is a kid that can run 1,000 yards in 7 games, a couple of touchdowns to boot, and you get a tight end who's also a fullback in Justin Hurley, who is also a threat at the goal line. He can catch the ball and he can poke it in because he's a big kid. So I think they're going to be better than they've been in the past.
Now, South Lakes is running, I've seen it described as the spread option offense. What on earth is that?
That's kind of my touch on what Coach Ellenberger was telling me. They're running the option, but they're spreading them out a little bit too. So they got a quarterback that can run, but they've also got some receivers. So basically, look, they have 45 kids they dressed for the varsity team last year. They're going to dress another 45 this year. They are being hurt by their population at their school, which was most recently marked at 1,420 kids. That's nothing when you're trying to field a football team.
Right.
So to get more kids out, they changed it up. They made football fun. They're throwing the ball. Come out, play for me. So what did they get? They got a kid in A.J. Price, who's a 6'4" basketball player, transferred in from Flint Hill for basketball. Well, actually for his education, but for basketball primarily, and he's going to be out there catching some touchdown passes for the Seahawks from quarterback Amir Gabriel, who can throw the ball pretty well. Went to quarterback camp down in Texas this summer along with some other backups, and they got some other weapons in there. They lost Mike Forner from last year, but they get Gabe Itoka, one of the fastest guys in the region. I think South Lakes was 3-7 last year. I know they were 3-7 last year. I think they take a bit of a step forward. I think they'll rise in that Liberty district, but not as much as I think they need to with where they've been in the last couple of years.
Rise like a Seahawk?
They're going to fly like a Seahawk.
Indeed. Woodson is a team that had a heck of a year last year. This crazy returning starter revolt that basically gutted the team pretty early on in the season, and then they also had a coaching change. The question is, what do the Cavaliers look like now, and are they going to be able to contend in the Liberty?
Unfortunately, I don't think Woodson will be able to contend in the Liberty. I mean, they're coming off of a 3-7 season. They've changed coaches, like you said. Trey Taylor coming in there his first year as a head coach. They're way too young, I think. They have a few sophomores that are going to be running the show offensively. I mean, they don't have it this year, but I think they're in the process of trying to build that program up. Like I said, they're starting with sophomores. Maybe in a year or two, they'll have a good core to rely on.
And they're a team, they're a program, I should say, that's known as one that sort of they're peaks and valleys. It's not like Robinson or anybody like that where it's just one thing straight across success. Woodson seems to have years when it's like this and it's like that, and then they come back again. So I mean, it's sort of in their character to take a step back for a few years and then go and contend for the next following few years.
Well, also I think their schedule is just very, very tough. Their first 3 games they're playing, the non-district games are against Centerville, against Fairfax, a crosstown rivalry, and then at Westfield. And I mean, those are 2 of the 3 teams that we talked about earlier as being, top tier teams in the Northern region. And then you have a crosstown rivalry, which is never easy to play in.
Right.
So, and then after that, they entered their Liberty District schedule. And depending on how they do in those games, which unfortunately I don't think is going to be too well, we're gonna see.
Now McLean is trying to have their first winning season since 2001. I'm a big fan of Coach Rivera. I like what he's done there. I've enjoyed watching that program under his tutelage. The question becomes whether or not they can break through this year.
3rd year at the helm. He's changed some things up a little bit, but not too much. He's keeping what he's got there. In their 3rd year of the program, I talked to him earlier this week, and he said, look, these kids now know what they're getting into every year. I mean, they lost Brendan Griffin, who played quarterback and running back at times, and Eric Smith, who was a 1,000-yard back for them. And Thomas Haffey was an important piece of that team. So they lost some significant pieces. It always seems like McLean has 2 or 3 really good athletes, and then they just don't have the numbers to fill in the slots around them. So you get some kids that come up with some really big performances every year, but they just don't have the backing to really take them as far as they could go in the Liberty District. They're going to try to remedy that, I believe, by tapping a young quarterback in John Shola. John Shola was a sophomore last year. He was splitting time with 2 other guys at the quarterback position, so he never got a chance to really show how much he could do. He threw for over 300 yards, but look, that was the best quarterback they had, passing-wise at least. So he saw some starts. He split time with James Pasco and Brendan Griffin, but I think he's going to get a chance to get in there, show what he's made of. They like his arm strength. He still has some time to grow into that role. Defensively, McLean is going to have some trouble. I'd like to see what they can do on their defensive line. Amro Shihada is a guy that's going to help anchor both sides of the line for them. So we'll see how that works out for the Highlanders.
And finally, as you've reminded me incessantly, Marshall was 5-5 last year, but could have been 7-3.
Yeah, I mean, look, they played some teams really tight. South Lakes and Woodson, they played them very tight. They almost spoiled Madison's playoff season. They had them at the very brink of that game. Madison pulled off like a 65-yard halfback pass to take that away from Marshall. And what a rivalry that had become finally again for a Vienna area that used to thrive on that. Now it's really become Oakton, Madison, but it used to be Marshall, Madison. And so good to see them back on the up and up. 5-5, could have been a lot better, but could have been a lot worse, to be honest with you. So they start off their season with Washington and Lee. They're looking to a young guy as well to help develop for the future. Harold Sweet, 6'3", sophomore quarterback. We'll see how that pans out for the Statesmen.
There you go. There's your Liberty District. All right, we've got another impossible trivia question for all of you at home to ponder.
It hasn't been very impossible.
Well,
neither
is this one. Neither is this one. The question would be, of course, which Patriot District team posted an 0-10 season in the 2004-2005 season? And I believe that team would be?
You tell me, Greg.
I'll tell you, it's Lake Braddock. They went winless in 2004-2005 before winning 6 games last year and taking 3rd in the Patriot District. And let's talk about that Patriot District, boys. Let's first take a look at the district last year. Of course, it was a season of transition in the Patriot with teams moving around and South County moving in. Now, South County was 1-6, 1-9 last year. Their first big historic win. I had the pleasure of being at that game against Hayfield, a game I'll really never forget. It was really surreal, the whole situation. But South County is a team that I believe could contend this year if everything we're hearing about the maturation and strengthening of their lines is true.
So far, South County really has done incredibly well in the preseason. And, we're hearing great things about them, and I went out and saw them practice, and they're really looking, like you said, strong. The kids have grown, the team is moving the ball, the offense is moving the ball, the defense is stopping them at the same time. I mean, they're really looking like a really good football team right now. And, Coach Pete Bendorf, he knows his football, and he's he's teaching these kids how to do it right.
There you go.
How important, though, Mirza, is it for Bendorf to have his first senior class? And, I know you got a chance to talk to him about that. How important is that for South County?
It's very important for South County. I mean, this is a historic year for them, fielding their first seniors. Last year they didn't have that. And what's really important for them as a football team is that they didn't graduate anybody because of that. So this is the only year that they get the pleasure of having almost everybody back on the team. They didn't lose anybody to graduation, so they can just build on off of whatever they had last year, which wasn't that much. But we've seen a great rivalry born between South County and Hayfield. And personally, I can't wait to go and cover that game.
Awesome. All right, Annandale was on top of the district last year, and they bring back Nate Cartagena, a quarterback, and he is really one of the best offensive weapons in that district.
Got a chance to see him last year when they played against Oakton. 2 weeks in a row, really. They played there. If you remember, Oakton played Annandale in the last week of the season, regular season, and then played them also in the first week of the playoffs at home. Oakton got the home field advantage, and Annandale showed up, and boy, did they show up. They played them tough both times. They gave them all they could handle both times, and really, Cartagena, when you talk about individual performances, this kid, to be very honest with you, he's not a very big kid, and he was playing against some Concord giants. These kids were dwarfing him when he was getting tackled. You couldn't even see him, and he's a kid that almost single-handedly led that team. Obviously, single-handedly led them to an undefeated record in the district, 7-0, and then they went 7-4 overall, with 2 of those losses coming to the eventual state champion. So Cartagena back for his senior year. He threw for over 1,000 yards last year. I think he's going to be impressive again to watch this year.
Now that said, they did lose their running back. Logan, the Logan kid went to Wakefield, transferred over there. Typically, Annandale does seem to have some talent they can put behind what's usually one of the most well-coached lines in the northern region. So, with the quarterback and maybe finding a running back there, they should be in good shape. Lee, speaking of running backs, Lee has a great one in Brandon Cameron, and Coach Rob Everett, the new coach there, I know is pretty high on him.
Right. He, like you said, he's very high on him. The problem with Lee is that they're hurting on the offensive line. They've graduated 4 or 5 of their starting offensive linemen, and they're a pretty young team as far as that goes. But the new coach there, Coach Everett, he's very high on his team spirit that they have there and the leadership that his group of seniors is providing this year. And I think Lee could actually improve on their 6-4 season. They were very close last year to almost going undefeated in the district. The games that they lost in the district were 1-score games. And, if they can improve a little bit from that, then, they're obviously a contender there.
There you go. And speaking of contending, I think I speak for all of us that Lake Braddock is a team we don't necessarily ever want to see go 0-10 again. It's always good when the Bruins are good.
Right.
And they were 6-4, and last year coming off a winless season the season before. And once again, you have to look at them as a team that is on the rise, and whether or not they can climb even higher with a strong offensive line and with a good running game this year.
And like you said, a strong offensive line. You know, like I said, Lee is losing their linemen. Lake Braddock is returning their linemen. They're stacked on the offensive line. And I talked to a couple of those linemen, and they're very, very high on themselves right now. Not to say that they're conceited in any way, but they're very confident. They think that they're one of the best units there are in the region.
Yeah.
And with Jordan Russell behind him, I mean, things can happen, you know? That can open up the play for some passing as well for Lake Braddock.
I don't think there's any question that they're a team to watch out for in the Patriot. Speaking of that, West Springfield, you know, we talked about Herndon needing to take advantage of an opportunity. Well, West Springfield's got a bit of an opportunity this year with quarterback Peter Lalich coming back. He's 6'5", he's 225. He's probably one of the most college-ready quarterbacks I've seen come through the northern region in my time here. What can we expect from the Spartans?
They're going to be a very good team as long as they stay healthy. Now, last year we said they were going to be a very good team, and they went in ups and downs. You know, they lost the first 3 games, they won the next 3 games. They lost the next 2 games, they won the next 2 games. Yeah. So they couldn't break that 500 barrier. But as long as they stay healthy, they'll have Lalich, who is running a no huddle offense. So the coaches have really entrusted him. They've said he's matured tremendously over the last year, and they'll have A.J. Johnson behind him to run the ball. And as long as A.J. Johnson can stay healthy, like he didn't last year, unfortunately for him and the Spartans, you know, they can be a very, very dangerous combination type team.
And they need that balance, because last year at one point it was like watching BYU. They had Lalich throwing the ball 80 times a game or something crazy like that. And if you get that balance, that makes him all the more dangerous as a quarterback. And
even so, I mean, with him just throwing the ball, he put up some great numbers last year. You know, with 22 touchdowns, I believe, thrown, ran in for 3 himself.
I like to see the pass attempts, though.
Right. But you know, like you said, if they stay healthy, the big question for West Springfield is, can their young defense handle the quick offense that they're going to put out there? You know, West Springfield offense looks like an offense that's going to make a lot of big plays. And if they do that and move the ball quickly, then the defense has got to be out there for a long time.
That's a good point.
And the big question there is, can the young defense that West Springfield has handle that?
You know, last year we had them ranked really high, and Lalich was a reason for that. But they had some other weapons there. I know he lost some receivers, but they went in their first game of the year and lost to Stonebridge, and I think that played a very big psychological effect on that team as being a team that everybody thought was going to do these great things, and here comes this unknown, this Stonebridge, who's Stonebridge, and really, I mean, takes it to them. And then nobody knew that. See, at that time, nobody knew Stonebridge was going to be a state runner-up.
Everybody was absolutely stunned by it, but looking back on it, it makes sense. You know?
It was a double-A team, basically, beating a West Springfield team that was slated to do all these wonderful things. So I think now that West Springfield knows that they got a legitimate contender that they have to be prepared for, and they got Lalich, basically a Peyton Manning of our area. I mean, he's on the line. He's a no-huddler. He's telling people where to go. He's reading packages, as Mirza got a chance to talk to them in practice this week and see that for himself. I think he's a kid that I can't wait to see him at the next level at UVA with a guy coming out of the backfield named Keith Payne. Right. That's a Northern Region tandem right there that I'd like to see take UVA to some new heights.
Now, West Pot and West Potomac, they don't like it when I say West Pot. West Potomac and Hayfield. Hayfield's still recovering from the South County opening. They're going to be sort of middle-of-the-road kind of teams, probably maybe a little bit lower than that. T.C. Williams is an interesting case because they are going to be sort of the vagabond team this year. All of the construction and all that stuff at T.C. as they make the new T.C. Williams. They're going to play some games at Episcopal and other places in the Northern Region, but they are a team that may actually have a little bit of something going for them this year in the Patriot.
The only problem with TC this year is that they're talking to Rich Sanders, our reporter, who got a chance to really talk with the TC people this week. They're going to be struggling at the beginning of the season because they've got some kids that are injured, and I know they're fighting an uphill battle already just in the preseason. Usually, people say, "Hey, if we can stay healthy, we'll be a good team." Well, they're not even starting healthy, so that's a really bad sign for the Titans. I think they can contend in that district. They lost, I think, their last 4 games of the season and didn't make the playoffs. They looked like a team that took Oakton to the brink on a Saturday game in the rain, and that was a game that really everybody thought TC was a great team. So after that, they kind of spiraled a little bit. So starting off with health issues is not the way you want to start your season.
Let's take another look at the Connection top 10 poll for the Northern Region, our preseason poll. As you see, Centerville, Stonebridge, Herndon, Annandale, West Springfield, Robinson, Westfield, Madison, Langley, Oakton. Something you do not see on that list, a team from the National District, which we're going to get to in a second, briefly touch on them. First off, last impossible trivia question of the night. It is about the National District, and then it is which National District team posted its first 6-1 record ever in the National District last season. And again, it's a trick question. You're very tricky.
I'm very tricky. I'm very shifty.
You're like Frank Gorshin over here.
So never underestimate the level of my sneakiness.
Loudon Valley is the answer. Valley, of course, their first season in the National really made an impact last year. They were 9-2 overall and 6-1 in the district, tying Edison at the top of the district for district record. Edison brings back Sean Lloyd. He passed for nearly 1,600 yards last year, had 21 touchdowns. They do lose a lot at the skill positions, and I really question whether or not they're going to have enough coming back in those skill positions for him to put up that sort of number again with Edison.
I talked to Coach Lewis over at Edison, and he is, he's saying, yeah, they lost a lot. They especially lost a lot of seniors. But if you look at Edison over the last 2 years, they've had 17, 18 seniors that have been on the team to lead the team. This year they have 7 or 8. One of them, Sean Lloyd, obviously unbelievable quarterback with the numbers that he put up last year. This year it's a question of can he have the support that he had last year from his skilled position players. So if Edison can get over the hump, Coach Lewis said, we're very young, we're green, we're raw, and the only way to get over that is game experience.
Right.
So putting them out on the field, and he's not predicting the greatest season in the beginning, but he's saying by game 3 or 4, watch out for us. We could be a very good team.
The general consensus, once again, seems to be that Edison and Valley are going to be the top 2 teams in the district, and I think that's only re-emphasized by the fact that Yorktown, a team that always seems to be in contention, is going to be without their star running back, Maximilian, for several weeks because of an ACL problem. So clearly they're going to be probably in the hunt, but not necessarily a team that you have to rank up there with Edison and Valley right now. And then you've got the rest of the district. I mean, Wakefield, they have no numbers, but they do have a running back. But I think he's going to learn pretty quickly that he's not running behind the Annandale offensive line anymore. And all the other teams, I mean, here's the thing you hear about Stewart, because we always talk about Stewart and we make little jokes about Stewart. They actually have better numbers this year than in years past.
Right.
They actually have more kids that came out for the team, and more power to them. In that district, the way it's structured, the way some of these teams don't seem to have a whole lot returning, a team like Stewart can jump up and be a 500 team in that district. There's no question that the possibility is there.
And Falls Church made some noise last year. I mean, if we get a chance to look at the season standings from where they ended up last year, I mean, Falls Church made some noise for once. I mean, I believe they had a new coach starting last year as well. And
it was
they
their
did pretty
second
well.
winning season in 25 years.
Yeah, and they had a quarterback, I believe Joey Collins was his name, if I'm correct. He did very well. Threw for 1,000 yards at least, and really helped to carry that Falls Church team. But the problem that you see in the National District, they had 3 teams, I believe, finish with a 1-9 overall record, and that's something you don't like to see in one district. I mean, we talked about the Liberty being top heavy, and that's what we're finding in a lot of these districts, obviously except for the Concord and the Patriot. But these National and Liberty districts, they're getting really top heavy, and I'd like to see some of that. I guess some of those teams playing each other then to help remedy that situation.
There you go. All right, folks. Well, there's the Northern Region. I think it was a heck of a preview, if I may say so myself. I'll pat ourselves on the back. The information we shared with the viewers tonight is quite
Nuggets,
impressive.
just golden nuggets.
Well, it's good to talk football again. We went through the summer doldrums, and it's always there's that we were talking about it the other day at the office. There's that little sort of almost like subtle crisp in the air now. On most days, when the sun goes down, you're like, all right. Okay, it's back on the sidelines with the notebook, watching the games, the whole bit, and it's good to have it back, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's going to be great to be on the sidelines, like you said, with the notebook and chasing sweaty young boys into the locker room to ask them questions about how they feel.
But
BJ has some other.
why
really,
should today be different than any other day?
Think
Right?
about it.
This is going to be my first year. Interesting fact: I've never watched a high school football game live.
Yeah,
Yes.
you've been
No,
in.
you
I
You used to be
played.
one of those sweaty boys.
I played,
Yes.
but I've never watched. BJ was that was a horrible time in high school. BJ
Yes.
Chase, but anyways, so it's exciting for me to actually be on the sidelines and watch these kids play. I can't wait.
I love
Likewise,
getting yelled at by coaches too. By the way, that's another part. I mean, if it's not smelling the nasty locker room and the sweaty young boys, it's getting yelled at by coaches for asking them what the difference in the game was.
There you go.
That's always fun.
That's always a good time.
I too am very excited, like Paul is, to be on my first year covering football in the Norton region. And the one district I really can't wait for is actually the Patriot District. I know we're talking up the Concord,
yeah.
but the Patriot District is wide open. There's so many teams that could step up.
Should be an absolute
falter.
blast.
Yeah, I
Absolute
can't
blast.
wait.
All right, let's take a look at some of the news that we need to share with you about the Fairfax Sports Report and the Fairfax Sports Network. The FSN Game of the Week returns, my friends. 9-1 to date. Lee at Madison? Edison. That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's Lee at Edison.
All right, Edison. That's what I thought. Well, that'd be a good game, too. But we're going to show you Lee at Edison. It is a good time. And then Oakton at Madison, the big rivalry game. You can
Outback Bowl.
The Outback Bowl. You can see the full schedule and all that good stuff on the website, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. And there it is right there. Hey, check out the full schedule there. And it should be a good lineup. I've seen the full lineup, and you can check it out as well. It's going to be a lot of exciting games. Want to thank the folks that make this show possible every single week. CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And available wherever books are sold. Will Pucks and 10 Cent Beer, the 101 worst ideas in sports history. Bye.
102nd worst idea in sports history was the Oakland Raiders signing Jeff George this week.
Really
need to write a sequel.
I know. The jokes have been flying. It's like the time machine jokes. Has Al Davis picked up a paper in the last 4 years?
But he wasn't even good in 2001, so why does he think after, 5 years off he's going to be good now?
Well, since we're talking about the NFL for a moment, I'd like to address the viewer who sent in an email about us talking about the Jets too often. I don't think we talk about the Jets too often. And
As
quite
we
frankly,
shouldn't.
Quite frankly, since we just announced that Chad Pennington's going to be the quarterback again, you're not going to hear anything about the Jets on this show this year. It's going to be too depressing.
How about them Jets, man?
I don't want to talk about the Jets. I just got through telling about it.
Curtis Martin was just put on the
Physically unable to walk without crutches list.
At least till week 6.
How about them Jets?
Those Jets, Jets, Jets.
All right,
Jets,
in the
Jets.
minute we have left, who wins the Northern Region Division 6 right now?
Centerville.
Northern Region Division 6.
Centerville.
I got to do it, man. I got to go with them Hornets. I just think they're too hard to beat.
Oh my God! Really?
Hey,
You didn't say that when Tommy was on the phone?
Look, I picked Oakton to win the state championship from day
Oh, that's
one
right. That's
last
true.
year.
So
Day one,
so from
I
day
picked
one,
them.
you're saying Herndon will win the Northern Region Championship.
I'm saying it right now.
I'm going to pick Robinson because I don't ever pick against Robinson because Mark Bendorf is a very, very large and strong man, and I would never, if I ever run up into him in the hallway, I'm never going to say I didn't pick Robinson. So I'm picking Robinson to win the Northern Region title.
You can't bet against them. You
can't?
can't ever bet against them.
Well, I'm doing it right now. And you know what? You know who
We're not
else is
betting.
going to be good? Don't sleep on Oakton. Irvin Garner and Jared Green. Those kids have something to prove. this
Evidently, BJ thinks the Concord District has 7 playoff spots available.
year. That's right.
Don't forget about Stonebridge Division 5. Stonebridge in
Stonebridge,
Division 5.
I think, is a lock in Division 5.
Yeah, well, I think we're all in agreement there.
Enjoy football, my friends, and thank you for watching. Please join us next week for more action and excitement. Take care, everybody.